Okay, today's January 23rd, 2022, and today I'm talking through a problem that is so incredibly specific that I don't think anybody will understand or care. So this one's just for me. There's this challenge I'm trying to solve. Sort of a semi-technical, semi-philosophical problem that involves the community. The Super Smash Bros. Melee community, which I am involved in and invested in. I mean, invested emotionally, not with money or anything. So anyway, there's this type of file, which is about the size of a song file. It's about 3 megabytes on average. So when you play a single game of Super Smash Bros. Melee on your computer, it generates automatically a file that's about 3 megabytes. So what happened was, a couple of years ago, some very smart guy named Fizzy, that's his gamer tag, software developer, came up with a way of emulating Super Smash Bros. On a computer and allowing it to be played. Well, it's a combination of things. He didn't come up with the emulator, but he came up with a way to play Smash online using the emulator. And he wrote the software that generates the file. This file, it's called a Slippi file, and it's unique. It's not like any other file because it's, well, what it is technically is a list of inputs for a single game. It's not a video of the game that was played. It's a list of inputs that were pressed. So there's 60 frames per second in a Super Smash Bros. Game. And so 60 times a second, the console or the computer that your controller is attached to is asking your controller, what buttons are you pressing? So 60 times a second, there's a poll taken, I think that's what you would call it, where it's saying, okay, what buttons are both players pressing? And so this file, all that it is a list of inputs, 60 inputs per second. So if the game's 100 seconds, you got 600 inputs, and or 6,000 inputs, and the file ends up being about 3 megabytes, about the size of a song file. So, which is much smaller than a video file would be if it was just a recording of the game. So it's an amazing piece of technology because it reduces the file size substantially for recording a game. And the other important thing here is that you can programmatically run through the list of inputs and search for certain patterns. So rather than have a video file that you would search through and use some sort of image recognition, you can write a script that says, okay, if this player does this move at this time, followed by this move, tag that with something, right? And then so what you can do is, it sounds arbitrary, it sounds uninteresting, but what this allows, this type of file, it allows for programmatic sorting of moments in these games. So if I had 10,000 of these files, if I had a folder filled with 10,000 files, I could write a script that would run through those files and pull out certain moments from the game. So you can automate the extraction of highlights. So you can imagine if you had 10,000 soccer games or 10,000 pool matches or fighting matches or something, it would be stored in video form. And if you had 10,000 hours of footage, there's only really 2 ways to get that footage out. You either have to hire a person to go through 10,000 hours of footage and pull out highlights, or you have to write some sort of image recognition program that can go through and recognize images. But both of those, first of all, if it's a human, it's subjective. Second of all, it takes forever. And if it's a video file, well, image recognition is difficult. We don't really, I mean, how do you write code that can pick out an interesting moment just from video? So that's why these files, specifically for Smash games, that are generated here, this list of inputs, are unique. They are special. And they are similar to the way that these files are stored are very similar. It's comparable to the way chess games are stored. So we can go back to chess games from the 1800s and recreate them. You can look at the best chess players in the 1890s, and the file is just a list of inputs, really. It's just a list of moves that each player made. And we can recreate a game with perfect accuracy in a chess game, and we can now do the same thing for a Smash game. We can recreate any game. So what you do is you take this list of inputs and you run it back through the emulator, and the emulator will recreate the game. Then you can record it. And turn it into video, which increases the file size, but makes it watchable. So there's a problem here. There's a problem here that I have run into with the Super Smash Bros. Community, because I've talked to people about this, and there's a disparity between the perception of value of these files. People in the community do not perceive these files as valuable, but I do. I think they are incredibly valuable. Well, I think they're more valuable than the storage space that they take up. So it's hard to explain why. It's really hard to explain why. I have a hard time explaining why to people that are into the game. And so I have an even harder time explaining why to people that don't really know much about the game itself. And this is my problem. This is why I'm talking about it right now. Is because it's hard for me to explain why these files are so valuable. It really is. I can't even explain it to people that play the game. I just yesterday went on to a Twitch stream and talked to a player who's arguably top 10 in the world. And I asked for his files. He had about 12,000 or 13,000 files on his computer because he's played about 12,000 games. That's what these pros do, and they play this game constantly. Some of them play 8 hours a day. 5 days a week. It's their job. They're paid to do it. They're sponsored. And so what they're doing is they're generating these files constantly. And the way the software works is it stores the files automatically in one of the folders on your hard drive. And these files are about the size of a song each. So 10,000 files ends up being a pretty sizable amount of data. It's about 30 gigabytes. So, that takes up space in your computer, and people they don't want that, so they delete it. And the deletion of those files is heartbreaking to me. It's heartbreaking. And I feel like I'm one of the only people that feels this way. That's the problem. I seem to be one of the only people that really thinks that this is a bad thing, that these files are being deleted. Mostly when it's top player files. I don't really care when it's files from a lower level player because they're not as interesting. But some of these players are, it's hard to describe the skill gap in this game. But the difference between me, for example, like I'm averagely competitive at this game, right? Super Smash Bros. Melee. I've been playing seriously since 2015, but I've probably, I've been playing since I was like 8 years old, like most other people. But and I'm average at that game. But the top players are 100 or 1,000 times better than me. And the files they're generating are therefore 1,000 times more valuable. That's how I see it. And I just watched yesterday a guy on his Twitch stream, because I said, hey, send me your files, I'll pay you. I offered him money, and then he deleted them out of spite. He didn't know who I was. He did it just to be funny, but he deleted 13,000 files off his computer. And he's a top player. And, well, it's disturbing to me that this is a mentality that he has. And through conversations with other top players in the past week, because I've been going around messaging top players, they do not recognize the value of the files that they have on their own computers. They don't. It's similar to talking to Gary Kasparov and having him delete his files for his games that he's played. The thing about a chess file is, of course, it's probably about 10,000 times smaller than one of these Smash files I'm talking about. It would be far easier to store chess files and send them around. The way I see it is, the ranking system that people use for Melee is pretty much, they sort people into the top 100. Every year, usually during regular non-pandemic years, a list comes out of the top 100 players of this game. And the way I see it, I've done the math, it seems like these players who play the game a lot generally play about 10,000 games a year. This is friendlies, including friendlies. Like, this is just for fun and otherwise. They play about 10,000 games a year. Each of those games is about 3 megabytes. So, top 100 players times 10,000 games a year times 3 megabytes ends up being about 30 terabytes of data per year. So, storing 30 terabytes of data is not cheap. It's not. It depends on how you want to do it. If you want to store it on the cloud, that's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. If you want to make it accessible to people, that's tens of thousands of dollars. But if you just want to put it in cold storage, if you just want to put that 30 terabytes in cold storage every year, that's not that expensive. That's in the low thousands of dollars. And that price will just go down and down. And the number of games people play, like that 30 terabytes is a pretty constant number. The top 100 is not going to play substantially more games in the year 2025, but this price of data storage will go down. So in the year 2035, 2045, 30 terabytes will be incredibly cheap to store. So if you're forward thinking, and if you recognize the value of these Slippi files, then the $1,000 or so that it would take to put these files in cold storage every year is a price I am willing to pay, at least. I would pay $1,000 to just spend on the cold storage required to store all of these files. And I would go around messaging all these players and collecting all their files. I would drive to their houses if I needed to, with a USB drive in hand to take these files. I think these files are that valuable. But the problem is nobody else seems to think these files are that valuable. They don't see it. And the reason they don't see it is because it's hard to understand the value of this data. It's, we're currently in this age, this strange transition time in the human race between, the organic realm and the digital realm here. We're sort of leaving meat space and entering the digital space, and I think people are having a hard time wrapping their heads around the value of information. The value of information. And so, a hard drive with 13,000 files on it versus a hard drive without 13,000 files on it feels like the same thing sometimes. When in reality, those could be two entirely different. I'm very traumatized by what happened yesterday. I'm very traumatized. I was in a Twitch stream and I watched this player delete his files after I asked him for those files. It was like watching ISIS destroy an Egyptian statue. It was like watching somebody launch cannonballs at the Sphinx. It was disturbing. It's like watching historical artifacts get burned. It's like if you went to chess.com database and just deleted some number of their files, right? You just said, hey, we don't need these anymore, and you just deleted some chess games. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. And I don't think these Smash players should be deleting their files. And I've talked to so many people now, and what happens is their hard drive just fills up with these files and they need more space, and so they just delete them as they go. And it's not good. But the problem is that they're big. These files are big enough that it's inconvenient enough that it's easier to delete them. So what needs to be possible is a way of taking these files from these players, instead of having them delete them, have them send them to some database. And so my challenge is convincing people that this is a good idea. Because unfortunately, what needs to be done to get these files out of their computers is they have to be zipped up into a compressed file and then uploaded to somewhere, right? And that just takes... I've now had this conversation with about 10 to 15 top players online. I've spent the past few days going around Twitter, Twitch, Discord, and just sort of talking to these players and trying to get their files, and I've run into some issues already. And the first issue is it's just the inconvenience of it. Just the inconvenience of, they're like, how do I do this? Which folder are the files in? How do I compress files? What do I do? How do I upload this? Oh, the compression takes forever. And it's true, the compression takes forever. If you take 10,000 files that are 3 megabytes each, and these are relatively, I'm not sure how I don't know that much about compression algorithms, but they're not designed for Slippi files, that's for sure. And if you're trying to compress 10,000 files, it's going to take your computer a couple hours. And people just don't want to do that. And then the upload itself, because it's the upload, it's like, 30 gigabytes compressed is still pretty big, and it just takes a long time to upload. Basically, it's very inconvenient to upload these files to a database. It's much more convenient to just delete them. And I need to make it worth their while to upload these files. I need to convince them. There's basically, the way I see it is, it's, from my perspective, it is immoral to delete these files. Maybe immoral is the wrong word. It's not. The cost of storing these files is, like, the value of these files is more than the storage space they take up. That's the main point. Is that if I could collect all the top 100 players' files, I could spend a couple $1,000 on storage and just store all of it. And that would be worth it, in my opinion. That's worth the money that you would spend on that storage. But the problem is that I don't have the contact information of 100 top players, and I don't have the ability to make them think that it's a good idea to compress these files and send it to me, or to anywhere. I talked to one guy, and he goes, "Why do you want these files? You're trying to steal my livelihood. You're trying to steal, because what I'm going to do is generate content from these files. That's what I'm going to do." But the way I see it is the content that I generate will pay for the storage. In an ideal universe, I would set up a system where people could contribute files freely, and they would get paid for contributing them. So in my ideal universe, there's a YouTube channel attached to these files. So there's a database that any player, top player, because I don't want to just take anybody's files, I have to take top players' files. A database where top players can connect to, upload their files, and then the content will get generated automatically from their files. And then any money that is made off the ad revenue for that content, because it'll be up on YouTube, will go to that player. And so it's worth it for them to contribute files. I need to set up a win-win situation. I need to create a structure that provides a win-win situation for these top players. And then they will contribute their files freely. And then I can collect all the files and then build some sort of database. There should be, in a similar way that we have a chess.com database of all the chess games ever played, there should be a smash.com database of all the Smash games ever played. The main barrier is the file size. But as technology improves, 30 terabytes in 20 years is going to seem like not that much. Right now, 30 terabytes seems like a lot. But that's You know, and 30 is a high estimate. It's not like every player generates 10,000 files a year, and it's not like all those files are valuable. You could go through and cut out the ones that you don't think are valuable for whatever reason or another. But 30 terabytes per year is not unachievable. You can spend a couple $1,000 and get that kind of storage. And it's not like every player would participate in this anyway. It would be less than 30 terabytes. So what I need to do is just build some sort of website where people can upload their files, and it needs to somehow be worth it, and it needs to be sellable in some way. And it seems like my vision of this chess.com database is not motivational enough for people to upload their files, because I've tried to communicate this to people and they just do not see the value of the files, as was displayed by this guy deleting his files just like flippantly. He just flippantly, out of spite, deleted them just because he thought it was funny, which is, it's hard for me to describe how heartbreaking that moment was. It really, I would have done anything to stop him from doing that. I offered to pay him. I think that was the problem. It was ironic. I don't think he would have deleted them if I didn't offer to pay. But he just didn't see the value in them anyway. Anyway, this is a problem that I think is so specific that nobody watching this video understands. I think, because I've had this conversation with a lot of people in this community, and I think for whatever reason I am particularly obsessed with data storage, because I sort of see, I mean, it really comes down to physics and entropy. Information is more valuable than not information. You know, a clump of dirt is worth a clump of dirt until you arrange it into information. So, like, you can take 1 cubic meter of dirt, and if it's just randomly arranged, then that is just 1 bit of information, really, right? That's just 1 cubic meter of dirt. But if you take that cubic meter of dirt and you arrange it in a particular pattern, you can store information. Suddenly, it becomes worth more than 1 cubic meter of dirt. So, now we have to get into an argument of what data is worth storing and what isn't. And I think the data from these Smash games is worth storing. This is a game that has been played for 2 decades. I would bet nearly my life savings on this game still being played in another 2 decades. The year 2042 will have a competitive Super Smash Bros. Melee scene. It will exist in 2042. This I can be sure of. It might sound unbelievable to people who haven't played the game. It might even sound unbelievable to people who have played the game. But the point is 2042, 20 years from now, people will be playing this game and they will still be interested in the files that are being generated right now. And in 2042, 30 terabytes will be on your phone, will be in your pocket. So the main challenge is just the fact that there are 100 computers out there containing some thousands of files that I just need to get into one spot. Like, that is the main challenge. I would do anything to get those files into one spot. I will drive around the country and collect these files myself. I mean, I can do it over the internet, but people seem to be so unwilling to just go to their folder, click zip, you know, highlight all, zip, and then upload. It's a difficult problem because I don't have access to the people that have access to these computers. I don't have everybody's contact information. Nobody knows who I am. Yeah, I mean, out of the top 100 players, very few of them even know I exist. And getting in contact with them is not easy. And then even when I do get in contact, I have to have this conversation over and over again of, hey, why is it worth it for this file to be shared? And then some of them take this as me trying to steal their information. They take this as me trying to steal their content because they want to make content out of their own files. So I'm left in this strange position where there's a goal that I think the community should want to achieve, but I have no way of communicating this to the community. The community itself does not, like the sentiment of the community, the overall mindset of the community is not one of, we should keep this data. They don't care. Like, the people in this community don't care. And they don't listen to me. So I am in the minority of caring about these files, caring about storing them. I'm in the minority. I don't have a way of communicating this to everybody. Like, it is as simple as, like, I could just pay for Google Drive Box. I could just pay some amount of money to host the files on Google Drive, and then if people just upload it, we'd be fine. Problem is, 30 terabytes on Google Drive gets expensive. I'd have to put it on a hard drive that I have at my house. That's the problem. Then it's just kind of mine, and then nobody else has access to it. To make 30 terabytes accessible to the public is extremely expensive. The read and write operations on 30 terabytes of data would stack up so quickly that it would become unaffordable for me, or even for, well, it would just become very expensive very quickly. But the cold storage, just to take these files and just put them somewhere rather than delete them, is actually a lot cheaper than most people would think. I mean, you can look up the price of terabytes on Amazon. You can buy a lot of data relatively cheaply, and you know that cost will go down over time as it does. I mean, how much? I currently have a SD card in my phone for 128 gigabytes, and that's mind-blowingly huge to somebody 20 years ago. So 20 years from now, 30 terabytes won't be that much, and the number of files being generated won't increase substantially over time. At least the files being generated by the top 100. The whole community, of course, you know, there's probably about 100,000 to 1 million people that play this game on a regular basis, and they're all generating files every single day. So that quickly gets out of hand. If you were to try to save the files of 100,000 people, if they're all generating 10,000 files, that's impossible. That can't be done without, you know, Google levels of technology, funding and technology. So that's why I'm focused on the top players. And also I think the top players' files are more valuable anyway because they contain higher level play. And you might think, like, what is, you know, assuming that I'm talking to non-Super Smash Bros. Fans in this video, because there might be people like, why are you so obsessed with these files? And it's like, well, think about chess nerds and how obsessed they are with chess files. How often do chess nerds go back and look at old games? Pretty often. It's interesting to go back and analyze them. And what's more interesting than a chess file about this Smash files is that it's a more... The difference between Smash and chess is that chess is discrete, meaning that there's 64 positions that a piece can be in. A Super Smash Bros. Character, a stage, or like the screen, is continuous, right? So the character can be anywhere on the screen. There's more than 64 positions the character could be in. If you want to take it pixel by pixel, there's thousands and thousands of positions. It's not perfectly continuous, but it's, compared to chess, it is kind of a discrete versus continuous problem. And then Melee, Smash Melee, the number of combinations of interactions that can happen in a single Smash game is comparable to the amount of positions available on a chessboard in total. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you the complexity of one of these games is higher, because a chess game, the difference between a chess game and a Smash game is that in chess you have minutes and minutes to think about your decision making, and in a Smash game you have a quarter of a second. But arguably the decisions that have to be made in each situation are, if you take time into account, it's comparable. If you compare, the best comparison I think between Smash and chess is something like bullet chess, which if you've ever played, you have 60 seconds per player, so total. So the decisions you have to make in a bullet chess game are sometimes less than a second. You have to take into account the whole board, calculate your next move, and you have seconds. And even that compared to Smash is a long time, but it's comparable. If you've played a bullet chess game and you've played Super Smash Bros. Melee at a high level, I mean, like I said, I'm not a good player at either of these things, but I'm competitive at both of them. I can compete in chess and in Smash Melee with people who take it relatively seriously. So I know what it feels like to play Smash at a certain level and what it feels like to play chess at a certain level. And the feeling of playing bullet chess, which is like chess as fast as you can play it, more or less, the feeling of playing that is similar to the feeling of playing Super Smash Bros. Melee. It's a thing that requires full focus. It's really a matter of who is more focused. It's very much about mindfulness. Like if you talk to these top Smash players, a large part of it's very psychological. A large part of the game is your ability to maintain focus on the correct, to basically utilize your mental resources properly, which is harder to do than it sounds like. And a lot of these Smash games take if you look at some of these high-level games and you analyze them, you realize that these players are making relatively complex decisions, sometimes 3 or 4 times a second. So this pushes your brain to its limits. That's what makes the game so interesting, is that both players are essentially pushing their cognitive abilities to as far as they can possibly go. And since neither human is a robot, they're limited, it turns into some rock, paper, scissors type gambling situations where you say, okay, I'm not going. It's the same thing with chess. Like if you watch top chess players analyzing games, or if you watch top chess players as they play, somebody will make a move, like their opponent will make a move, right? And part of the thing that makes chess interesting is there's a time limit. You can't just sit there for days and think about your next move. So you can't go through every possible combination of moves. But you have to, I'm sure people who listen to this channel understand enough about chess that you understand that it's like a series of hallways you can take, right? Every move, if you're looking at a chess position, there's kind of a branching series of decisions you can make, right? Every decision you make leads to different decisions that you can make. And a good chess player can look ahead into the future. But of course, no chess player is God, so they can't see all the way to the end, not like a computer can. So sometimes if you watch a top chess game, their opponent will make a move. Like a grandmaster will be watching their opponent who will make a move. And this is what they'll say. They'll say, I don't believe you. Which is an interesting way of saying this, right? They'll say, this person's making an argument. That's kind of how they see it. They see it as, oh, you made this move. I don't believe that you've calculated far enough ahead to know that this is a good idea, right? And so it's kind of like a bluff. You can sort of bluff in chess. You make a move that doesn't look good at the moment, and you can, what you're doing essentially is saying, I know this is a good move because I've calculated far enough ahead to see that this is a good move, right? But the other player doesn't necessarily know that you've done this. And they only have some number of minutes to figure out if you've actually made that calculation or not. So there's a kind of a bluff that comes along with it. And the same concept, well, it's not a bluff, but it's more of a, since both humans are pushing themselves to their cognitive limits, rather than a competition of who can calculate further, it becomes a competition of who can psych the other person out. And now it becomes a more psychological game. It's more brain versus brain than brain versus complexity of game situation, which is hard to describe. So that's why if you watch Super Smash Bros. Melee played at the highest level, there's a kind of a psychological advantage that can be gained over the other player. And in the game, we call this momentum. That's what commentators and top players will call it. But you can basically achieve a psychological position known as having momentum, where there's a lot of different ways to look at this, but you essentially have the other player on the back foot. And part of this is just the way the game is set up. Like, you can have the other player in a defensive position, and if you make your decisions correctly, you can maintain an offensive position and force them to make defensive moves. And this is partially just the way the game is set up. It's partially the mechanics of the game, but it's also a psychological state of mind. It's also something that you can force your opponent into, and the best players will force their opponents into these psychological positions frequently. So what I'm trying to say here is that this can be measured now that we have these files. We can programmatically find moments in these games and extract them in the thousands. So if you had 10,000 files, you could write code that could go through and find certain moments, pull out those moments, and then record them, turn them in from input files into video files, put them all into a row, and now we can use this to study these games, or just for entertainment value. There's also moments in these games that are very exciting, and again, you can programmatically pull these out. So I could look at 10,000 files played by some top player, and it's really up to the coder. It's up to the imagination of the person who's trying to figure out these files. And I'm just one person. I've just messed around with it for a little bit, and I've managed to... people have been making tools that can do this kind of stuff. And, well, the tools are just going to become more and more accessible over time, and more powerful over time. So really, what we need to do is start storing these files right now. We need to get ahead of the game. That's what I think. "36-minute video, wow." Yeah, I'm just trying to talk through a problem here. How do I get these files onto a central computer? How do I make this a win-win situation for everybody? I need to make a convincing argument to people for why they should interact with some sort of central database, why they should take the time to zip the files on their hard drive and upload them to one spot. How is that worth it to somebody? How can I make that worth it? How can I convince them that this chess.com database would be a good idea for the Smash community? I don't know. These are just things I need to think about. Today's January 23rd, 2022. I'm done. I'll see you later.